Good evening, everybody. Welcome. My name is Scott Sinclair. I'm the Senior Manager of Programs here at Cancer and Careers, and I want to welcome you all to this evening's webinar or this afternoon's webinar, depending on where you're joining us from. For those of you who are listening in on your phone, please let us know by sending an email to cancerandcareers@cew.org with your name and the phone number that you're dialing in from. That way we can confirm your attendance and make sure you receive all of the relevant follow-up information after the webinar. If you are new to Cancer and Careers, first of all, welcome. We're glad to have you. We are a national nonprofit and the only program of its kind solely dedicated to empowering and educating people with cancer to thrive in their work environment. This is a list of all of our free programs that we offer, and our website is available in both English and Spanish, which is the heart of everything that we do. There you can find various support services, including our resume review service and access to career coaches, like Julie, who is about to speak. Our educational blog and newsfeed are both rich resources for those who've been diagnosed, their caregivers, employers, healthcare professionals, all of which can stay current on topics related to work and cancer. Our free publication library is also available in both English and Spanish, and provides tangible, easy to digest information on working and looking for work after a cancer diagnosis. And those are available in both hard copy and PDF format. We also hosted numerous events each year, from hour-long webinars like the one you're about to see right now to full-day events. And I'll be back after Julie speaks to tell you a little bit more about what we have coming up. For those of you who are seeking continuing education credits, this slide lists all the organizations that have accredited today's webinar, as well as the required steps for getting a certificate. This information is also available on our website, and a link to the evaluation and the post-test will be shared at the conclusion of today's webinar. So please take the time to complete them when you can. If you're not able to complete them today, that's totally fine. We'll send an email tomorrow, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern, with all of the information as well. And you'll have 2 weeks to complete that. Also, for those of you planning to request continuing education credits, our accrediting bodies require us to share this slide and let you know that there are no conflicts of interest to report. Now, as you might know, Zoom has a lot of great features which you can use to interact with us today. There's a chat box you'll see in your features panel. Feel free to use the chat box to communicate with our speaker, with our staff, other attendees. However, it's important to note that the chat box is not private and will show your first and last name. So that's something to be mindful of when or if you decide to engage in the chats. You'll also see a Q&A box on the same panel. We'll have time for Q&A at the end of the session today, so drop your questions as it goes along in there, and I'll be back to help Julie answer some of those questions at the end. And again, just a reminder, any questions you have, please put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box. We might miss questions that show up in the chat box, and we don't want to forget anyone. If we don't get to your question today, please send us an email at cancerandcareers@cew.org, and we'll get you a response as soon as we can. I want to thank, in part, to Genentech and P&G Beauty. Cancer and Careers is proud to offer this 10th year of our Balancing Work and Cancer webinar series, which was created to provide anyone whose life has been touched by cancer with concise, targeted information about work-related issues that arise after a diagnosis. Additionally, we'd like to recognize Cancer and Careers' year-round sponsors who support all of our core programs and allow us to continue providing all resources and services free of charge. Now, we often hear from cancer survivors going through a cancer diagnosis and treatment that the experience has brought up different ideas and ignites many new passions. A lot of people state that they're ready for a career change after a diagnosis. And to talk us through this topic, I am thrilled to introduce Julie Jansen. Julie is a speaker, trainer, coach, author. She really does it all. She's helped thousands of professionals find success and satisfaction at work, as well as finding work that is gratifying. And most of all, Julie is one of our original coaches here at CAC, and over the years has helped patients and survivors with their individual employment challenges and provide expert advice on the next steps. Again, I'll be back at the end to give you a little bit about what we have coming up and some Q&A. But without further ado, I'll hand it over to Julie. Thanks so much, Julie.
Thank you very much, Scott. Hi, everyone. I wore orange today to match the slide, the current slide. Anyway, I'm really thrilled to be here. I will echo what Scott said just a few moments ago, and that is that quite frequently at Cancer and Careers, we hear people say that after having cancer, they no longer feel that the work that they have been doing aligns with what's important to them from a values or a lifestyle standpoint. However, it can be difficult to either decide what else you might want to do work-wise, or if you do think you know, how to go about actually shifting or changing careers. So let me give you a couple quick stats. And one of them is, and I think you probably know this, that engaging in a single career or a lifelong trade is no longer the way that we will work now or will work in the future. The average person will change careers somewhere around 5 to 7 times during their working life. And 30% of the total workforce will now change jobs every 12 months, according to the US Department of Labor. Fast Company says that 6 out of 10, or 59% of middle income Americans, consider changing careers, and 44% already have a specific plan to change. This means that changing careers is not only acceptable, but it's also expected. And the pandemic and recent layoffs have both forced and enabled many people to be able to reinvent themselves, as well as motivated even more people to decide what they want to be as gratified as they can in their work. So let's kick into some of the sort of psychological tips before we go to the practical things that you can do to shift or change careers. As adults, we do tend to believe that we know all about the right and wrong ways of doing things. We can get very mired in our habits so that it becomes hard to change. And in addition to the practical tips, I want to talk to you a little bit about how to increase your self-awareness and also how to assess how others may perceive you. These are things that are important to do, whether you're shifting careers or whether you're simply looking for another job similar to the one that you have. Your attitude profoundly influences everything you do and say. So if you're nervous or angry or apathetic, this shows, and these are all emotions that other people don't find comfortable, yet they do affect the way you present yourself. And certainly the world is, as we well know, is not fair, and unresolved feelings about whatever your situation or circumstances are will jeopardize your search for either a new job or changing careers. Flexibility is really important as a quality. It's not a good idea to put up parameters around. I mean, you do want to be aware of what your preferences are and what's important to you, of course, but putting up too many parameters around your career change that would preclude you from being successful. So, and also just to try to stay confident and positive. It isn't always easy. We have things that happen to us. You've been through, cancer diagnosis and treatment, and it's scary and fearful and all of that. But whatever you can do to maintain your positivity and your confidence is important. And regarding positivity, positive thinking may be more powerful than you realize because it has so many benefits. It helps you keep a clear mind, as well as helping you stay more energized and organized. It can also impact others around you. So if you're happy and exuding confidence, your positivity will definitely become contagious and you'll start to see things fall into place. Remember that while no one owes you anything, no one is really out to get you either. So you create your own destiny and you can explore so many alternatives. Even if you're focused on one thing, like just finding a part-time job, you might find 2 contract positions. You just, until you know that an option isn't for you, just be open-minded to the different ways that you can segue career shift or a career change. And honestly, employers are hiring so many more contract and part-time employees than they have in years. And in fact, today I was working with a woman who owns a small law firm, she's been an on and off again client, and her associate is leaving, and she is interviewing people, and she's kind of figuring out how to juggle. She is likes one person who doesn't have as much litigation experience, another person who's overqualified, and she was kind of figuring out how to put the pieces of the puzzle together with hiring these two people while staying within her budget. And as I've never known her to be as flexible about the way that she would hire employees in the past. And of course, remote and hybrid work arrangements are more common thanks to COVID. Interestingly, I have a client named Paul who's job hunting, and he wants to work on site 100%. Believe it or not, he's actually having a tough time finding this type of opportunity. And I've encouraged him to negotiate this as close to the upfront as he possibly can. And then your career change will always take much more time and energy than you can expect. Timing is everything. You'll get impatient. You need to be really reasonable in your efforts at time management and learn to deal with the psychological impact of time passing with, not feeling like you're cemented into your career change. So some things that you can do, no matter what circumstances have caused you to rethink your career options, be reassured in knowing that it's natural to think about starting over, getting a new job in your field with a different employer or an entirely new one. But I would urge you to get advice from trusted colleagues and career professionals before making that decision to follow your dreams. So clients that I've worked with have found that these questions, if you've got the slides, are helpful when making the determination to seek an alternative type of work than you've been doing before. So I won't read each one, but basically looking at what you need financially, looking at what your always realistic timeline is, remembering what I just said earlier about the fact that it always takes longer than you'll imagine. And obviously your timeline is often driven by, how much money you need to make, who's depending on your income, what other kinds of sources of income can you generate. Everybody has skills that are transferable. I find that it's a very difficult exercise for people to sit down and literally make a list of more than 5 to 8 skills, but you have a ton of transferable skills, even if you've just been working 3 years or 5 years. So what are the skills that you think you need to strengthen and develop when you're going through the process, getting some education? There's tons of different types of online learning, some of it free, some of it you pay for. But just listening to podcasts, and I mean, there's just tons of ways to learn skills without necessarily having to go back and get another degree or a major certification. And then finally, what kind of education or training does your new potential career actually require? Other questions like, can you afford additional education or the time that it might take? Do you have stamina? I mean, that's a big issue for many of you if you're still going through treatment or you're suffering from cancer, chemo brain. And then just, do you have the opportunity financially, especially, to be able to take an entry-level job or an internship or shadow someone for a while? Are companies actually hiring? I mean, it is true that there's extensive layoffs going on right now, but that's not in every single industry, and not every single company. And in fact, I know I had worked in outplacement many years ago before I became a career coach, and I know that companies really took advantage of following the trend of layoffs when they actually financially, and their shareholders weren't expecting them to do that, so they're doing it for different reasons than the fact that they can't afford to hire employees or pay employees. So, and then just, are your dreams of a new career realistic from, many standpoints after you've done this self-evaluation? So now what I want to do is just kick into, and this all just in all transparency comes from a book I wrote called I Don't Know What I Want, but I Know It's Not This. It just hit, I'm happy to say, 100,000 copies. It took a long time, but I'm pretty happy about that. And so it's got 3 editions, and it just really talks about why you would want to find a new career. And as Scott had mentioned and I mentioned earlier on, the number one reason is the meaning. You don't, and I'll define meaning a little bit more in depth in a few moments, but it's just that you're looking for something. When I first wrote this book, I went out and interviewed everyone, and this was just the number one reason. What I do doesn't mean anything to me, to my family. I don't care about it. It's not like, significant, important. It doesn't help people. Whatever the meaning is, that was one of the things. And then been there, done that, but still need to earn, bruised and gun shy, bored and plateaued, yearning to be on your own, and then one toe in the retirement pool. So let's dig into them a little bit more deeply so that you can take a look at each of these 6 types of situations and think about yourself, and think about whether they are applicable to you and your specific situation and why you might want to shift careers. And I'll tell you that when I poll, when I stand in front of a live audience or I poll people, they're usually 2 or 3 are relevant for you. It's not just one. So there might be one that's kind of dominant. So just think about yourself where this is concerned and see what you think. So this is where I defined the 10 types of meaning, because meaning is different for everybody. Meaning does not just mean doing good or making a difference. For some people, it's new opportunities, more money, or recognition, and that's great. Others, they want to be in an intriguing or attractive field or industry. I find that people in the arts or entertainment, or like I coach people in the music industry, they're passionate about music, and they'll do anything just to work, with artists. Expressing or living your specific standards and your principles and your values. I mean, you would argue that that's important for everybody. For some people, yeah, it is. You don't want to conflict with those, but at the same time, it might not be top of the list for you, and why you would want to shift careers. This one's big for me, making a difference, giving back, sharing, changing, improving something, solving problems or answering complex questions is a biggie for some people. Changing your lifestyle. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, and we certainly lived that for 3 years or so during the pandemic, modifying or altering your lifestyle, your priorities, your relationships, and realizing the significance of doing that. Some people just need to feel very passionate. I will tell you that those people tend to be more in the minority. And I don't mean that you're not interested, but feeling deep passion is not necessarily a requisite for shifting careers. Supporting a cause. I support a cause, cancer and careers. I've been volunteering and doing work with cancer and careers for, my gosh, I want to say 18 years, which, says something. It's true to my heart. And everybody, you might just volunteer more casually. You might start a foundation yourself, but that might just be important. And usually we tend to gravitate towards something that has some personal meaning for us, that someone in our circles have been impacted by. And then innovating and creating, that's just introducing or producing or imagining something new or different. Learning is big. When I first developed this list, I didn't have learning on it. And then I was talking to an audience and someone raised their hand and said, wait a minute, what about learning? And I went, oh my gosh, how could I forget that? Understanding, expertise, gaining knowledge. Some people just are innately interested in doing that as much as possible. But the most common fear that people have about pursuing meaning is they automatically default to, oh no, I won't earn as much money. And while it is true that there are situations where initially you might not make the same kind of money that you would have made as an employee in the career that you've been in, it's more likely that it's just because you're starting something new, not because you're pursuing meaning. So it's pretty important to differentiate these. The key is not to focus on not making enough money, but instead to concentrate on what your brand of meaning is and make it happen by being focused, by being creative, by being flexible, and by being resilient. And as the old book Marcia Sinitar wrote called "Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow," I'm an absolute believer in that. So the next one, been there, done that, but still need to earn. These are people who have large expenses, kids in college. I once had a friend who had two sets of twins in college at the same time. And she was like, I can't do anything for a long time. But these people want to be successful in their work. They may kind of like it, but they've just done it for a long time. So the whole obstacle for this kind of category is just that people don't really make a plan. They don't make a midterm plan and a long-term plan. They just fixate on what they're spending a lot of money on now, and they just dream, but they don't actually sit down and go through the process that I'll be outlining for you, like self-assessing and identifying their top three career work interests and meeting with their financial planner and aligning their career plans with their financial plans and focusing on doing things outside of work until that they can move on to the been there, done that, but still need to earn category. Bruised and gun shy. I'm sad to say, and I've been in this category myself when I was an employee. This is a biggie because it's a lot of people have found themselves in this. It's really just being like the victim of a difficult and changing workplace. So it's really geared towards people who have, I hate the word victimized, but they've been affected by layoffs, by mergers and acquisitions, a tyrant boss, corporate politics. There's a lot of reasons that these will all lower your self-esteem and your confidence. And obviously it's a little hard for you to either look for a job or think about seriously changing careers if you're not feeling great about yourself and who you are and what you have to offer. So this was really just about focusing on what I was talking about a little earlier, which is developing or enhancing your confidence level. I talk to a lot of people who are younger and early career, and they've got imposter syndrome. We all have suffered from imposter syndrome. They don't have confidence just because they don't have the experience to build the confidence. And that's what experience does for you, is it teaches you that you can achieve and you can succeed and you do have skills and you can add value. And as a career coach, of course, I believe everybody has this. So these are just some things that you can do to kind of focus on building your confidence and taking little risks and trusting your intuition and surrounding yourself with people that care about you. But you've got to move out of that bruised and gun shy and stage, and it can take some time, and that's okay, actually. So the next one, bored and plateaued. When I was an employee, I would get bored every 3 years, and I was like, what's wrong with me? Why am I so easily bored? And I have never been, I was a little bored during the pandemic, which was the first time in my career as a self-employed person, but never bored in my own business. And this is just someone who just is ready to move on. They need to make a change. Maybe they stayed in the same job for too long, but I always think it's kind of like, I joke and say it's like being in a bad relationship. You don't just run to another relationship. You take a look at what you can change or improve, eliminate, shift in your current relationship, and you have a relationship with your employer. And so it's just looking at that, figuring out whether or not there's a way to revitalize the situation you're in. Should you leave your job but stay in your industry? Or, what some people do is they just have a lot of interests outside of work, so that when they're a little bored, I don't love the idea of someone staying in a job and being bored for too long, because I don't think that's psychologically healthy. But sometimes that's a choice people make, and you have to do what works for you. So yearning to be on your own. I don't know that I ever yearned to be on my own, but I recognized early on that it was whatever I needed and wanted, I wasn't going to get by being an employee. So honestly, that's the only reason I kind of launched out on my own. But the nice thing is there's so many different types of entrepreneurial, or that's kind of a big word, but self-employment type situations. You can just you become a contract employee. Freelancing is very big for people, purchasing a franchise. I mean, it's funny. I did a little bit of research on franchises because I'm a little out of touch with that. But what I learned just a few days ago is fast food restaurants, full service restaurants, and gas stations with convenience stores make up the largest number of franchises. Yet they also, of course, require the highest investment and make up for the highest rate of failure. Service businesses such as cleaning, beauty, signage, pet grooming, tutoring, those have the easiest point of entry, the lower level of investment. But what people like about that is it provides some sort of structure for you, but you've got to really do your due diligence. Buying a business, I mean, people do still buy businesses, or creating a partnership. But I always say, if you're going to be in partnership with someone, make sure you go to pre-marriage counseling before you do it. And then this is true. Just you have to get clients. They don't fall into your lap pretty much ever. One might, but that doesn't happen consistently. So that's tough for a lot of people, because a lot of people are not comfortable with selling, quote unquote. Maintaining cash flow is not easy. Paying the IRS on a regular basis in the beginning is not easy. You might not have the support system. I mean, I remember starting my business and my family basically telling me I was nuts, because they're all rather on the traditional side. So I didn't have that support system. And then just being able to blend, I call it blending rather than balancing your business and life. I still work probably more than I should, but frankly, I'm passionate about what I do. So I managed to juggle it, and I still take time off and go away and do fun things. So the last one is, this is the people that want to kind of retire or semi-retire. Most people don't just stop cold turkey unless they've got very serious health issues. But I think that the whole reason I included this in my book is that there isn't a reason that someone who's older can't do work just because they're older. So they can do anything they want. And it's actually much easier to do something dramatically different when you're closer to retirement age, because all the things that might have motivated you when you were younger and earlier in your career, like money and status and achievement, are not motivators as much anymore. So just looking at what your finances look like, choosing where you're going to live. There's lots of lists published about the great area, states and cities to live in. And then what do you actually want to do? And the people that I know who have retired from work, they actually end up doing too much. They end up volunteering too much, being too busy, having too many activities. And so they have to kind of figure out how to control that, which I guess is an interesting issue to have. So those are my 6 types. And so what I want to do, normally I'd stop and ask for questions, but I want to just run through it looks really simple. I'm not suggesting this is a simple process, but this is my 3-step process for changing careers. So once you figured out, like, I want to change careers for this reason and that reason, this is what's motivating me, this is the next step, which is self-assessment, identifying opportunities and obstacles or roadblocks, and then creating a simple action plan. So let's jump into self-assessment. So I don't think, I really believe that assessing yourself and who you are, what you can do, what you need to learn, it's fundamentally foundational to starting this process. So a lot of people will jump and start looking around the world at jobs, at companies, at industries, talk to people, and that's all great. But it doesn't then necessarily align with who you are and what you need and what you want and what you have to bring. So I like taking a look at, and by the way, this, I kind of joke and say all the self-assessment kinds of things we're going to talk about in the next few minutes, you should be able to open up a doc and on your laptop or your tablet and be able to just put everything about yourself on one page, which is an interesting exercise for people to do. So, and you want to kind of, write them down and look for patterns. And some people love self-analysis and some people cringe, when I ask them to do it, but it does remind you of who you are, remind you of what you can offer. And it does help you build your confidence, to our earlier point, because confidence is really important. So whether you're learning about yourself for the first time and going through this process for the first time, or you're just kind of reminding yourself of what you already knew, look at your values. Your values are those things that motivate and fulfill you. I have an assessment where I have clients force rank their top 10 values and then rank which ones are being fulfilled for them in their work. And it's really interesting to see, like, some people, I did this with a woman recently who works in benefits, a high level benefits job, and only 4 of her 6, she chose 11 values, were met at work. And so that to me is a bit of a red flag. And the ones that were met at work were like financial stability because she gets paid well, and things like that. So that's an important thing to just take a look at. And values range from autonomy to building something, to relationships, to family happiness, physical activity, you name it. Your attitudes are something I kind of like made up, but they're basically your attitude towards yourself and the external world. Research has consistently shown you that your state of mind directly motivates your behavior. So, like, in a positive sense, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, those of you who possess an optimistic attitude about a goal or a challenge are far better equipped to overcome any barriers to achieving a goal. On the other hand, someone who's a little more negative with a negative attitude will find it much more difficult to achieve your goal. So self-confidence, we've kind of talked about quite a bit, but it's just basically a feeling of trust in your own abilities, qualities, and judgment. So if your self-confidence is low, you may not feel open or optimistic or willing to take risks, and it's more difficult to change careers when your self-confidence isn't healthy, which is why I'm harping on that. Your self-knowledge is exactly what we're talking about, honestly evaluating your strengths, the areas where you might need more development, and asking other people for feedback is often a useful exercise. Managing relationships. I'm a firm believer, I'm an extrovert, but I'm a firm believer in the fact that other people are crucial to learning about the external world. You can research up the wazoo on the internet about things, but without strong relationships to help you, the process of exploration can be painful, and it is never too late to build a network. And it doesn't have maintaining motivation. It's hard to be motivated when you're not feeling well, or you're going through treatment, or you're nervous. But staying focused and energized through this career change process is up to you. And goals. Speaking of goals, if you don't have a focused plan of action for achieving specific outcomes with reasonable goals, you won't stay motivated. And then finally, a professional commitment. So this is an attitude that provides a physical, a mental, and an emotional connection to your work. So trying to remember what energized you and made you committed to your job or your company in the past, and doing this may help you to figure out what you need to do to make this commitment again to something new. So more areas to self-assess are, of course, your personality. You can't do a lot about your personality. You were born with it. Any of you who have young children, you already know what your kids' personalities are basically like. You can shift aspects of your personality because of experience and because of self-awareness, but you cannot change the essence of who you are. So that means that doing work that isn't a fit for your personality will create dissatisfaction. So I once coached someone who worked on an IT help desk. The trouble is she was highly introverted and she really didn't like people that much. She liked IT, so she took a coding boot camp and she found a job programming where she was interfacing more with her computer than with people, and it worked out to be a good outcome. So we know the difference between introverted or outgoing. I mean, this is very similar to MBTI, Myers-Briggs. You know, introverts and extroverts differ in the way that they recharge their energy and the way they interact with others. Introverts prefer solitude a little bit more. They don't like to be the center of attention. They typically work out things on their own. You're outgoing, you probably have more social relationships, you're more expressive and easier to read. An idealist or realist, idealists prefer to imagine possibilities. They love ideas. They tend to focus energy on the future and what could be. And realists just are more literal. They prefer specific and realistic other than what they cannot see or imagine. Emotional or factual, emotional people like me, I tend to be more focused on feelings and my personal values. Someone who's more factual veers more towards laws, rules, policies, analysis. Structure or spontaneity, you kind of already know what that is, assertive or acquiescent. Assertive people tend to be more dominant and go-getters, while acquiescent people tend to be a little more passive and prefer to be behind the scenes. So if you haven't taken a personality test recently, you might revisit that because it's really enlightening, and there's a lot of books that talk about the type of work that's good for specific personality types, like Do What You Are is written by a colleague of mine named Paul Teager based on MBTI. So interests, the four categories that I focus on are people, ideas, data, and objects, and we all tend to kind of vacillate towards one or two of these. People is obvious, activities and tasks that involve interaction with people. You might enjoy, like me, teaching, persuading, coaching, leading people. Ideas is, these are people who are intend to lean more towards, believe it or not, arts, music, drawing, painting, sewing, writing, expression of feelings, philosophy, those kinds of things. Data, a lot of data jobs right now. I mean, data, it's ruling the world, as you know. And so people who lean towards data tend to be more interested in concrete and realistic tasks, financials, directions, procedures, processes. And then objects are people that love to work with their hands. They might like gardening, working with plants and animals, or fixing things. And I'm happy to see that in our country, at least in the United States, we're moving more back towards sending people to trade schools, because we have a terrible shortage of tradespeople, trades professionals. And there's such a myth around that they're blue collar jobs and they don't earn as much money. And it's quite the contrary, actually. So, and then favorite skills is, I always joke and say you have a million skills, but these are the skills that you're still willing to use rather than just saying, oh gosh, I'm a good writer, so I should keep writing. You kind of want to think about that and what the level of proficiency is that you have with skills. And a lot of people, especially younger people, have what are called untested skills. So it's a skill that maybe you dabbled in, but you don't know as much about. So you want to continue developing to learn how to use that skill. And one of the ones that comes to mind for me often is presentation skills, like people presenting, if they don't have a real opportunity to do that. That's just a good skill to sort of have in your quiver, so to speak, of tools, or your toolbox, or whatever. I don't know why I said quiver, but anyway. All right, so let's jump to what people say to themselves when they want to change careers, the negative things they say. Because regardless of your situation, of the economy, there's layoffs, whatever's going on. We're in a presidential election year. There's a lot of wars. I mean, the world is wackadoo right now, and yeah, all that stuff is happening. But then what we do is we put our own roadblocks in place, and I'm going to focus on the roadblocks first because people tend to focus on those, or prioritize those, let's say. So the first one I mentioned when we were talking about where's the meaning, I will have to take a decrease in pay. Well, nobody really talks that way. I was thinking about changing that. I'll have to take less compensation or whatever it is. But So evaluating whether earning less money initially is a trade-off that you're willing to take to increase your happiness and your satisfaction is an important exercise. I know I did it several times in my career, and believe me, it paid off. Packaging your transferable skills and your transferable experience so that you're presenting yourself to potential employers with high value can help mitigate the concern that you'll be paid less. And also, there's ways to make money besides just that one new career or that one new job. Side gigs are very popular. A lot of, especially people I know who are younger, early career, a lot of them are doing things on the side to earn money. There's a multitude of ways to earn money. And it doesn't mean you need to earn a lot of money, but I think it's just important to develop yourself that way anyway and learn how to do different things for compensation. So that's a big one that I hear a lot, not being able to earn as much money. I don't have any experience in whatever industry I'm interested in. So 22% of workers over the age of 50 don't believe that they have the experience and skills required to work in a different field. This comes from the source Now Teach. While there are some industries who for sure are not as open-minded about hiring someone without specific industry experience, there are others that really are. And businesses and organizations all have the same functional areas: finance, human resources, sales, IT, customer service, marketing, etc. No matter what the industry is. So find the ways that whatever industry you're looking at, find the commonality to what industries you're working in, have worked in now or recently. Also, there are many ways to get experience, industry experience, without being hired full time. Volunteering, interning, sitting on a board, part-time consulting, freelancing. Again, also ways that you can make money. And then, of course, networking with people who work in the industry that you're interested in is always helpful. What's the good, the bad, and the ugly about industries, because that's definitely something that you can only learn so much about from doing online research. I don't know how to find a company that's going to allow me to be me, to express my ideals and my values. I mean, again, I know I sound like a broken vinyl record, but people are the best source for learning about a company's culture. I have a client named Peter who, when he decided he wanted to change jobs, he specifically found he was fortunate. He got 3 offers all at the same time, which is unusual and hard to do. And he found 2 people who had worked at each of the 3 companies from which he had gotten the offers. And he sat him down and said, be really brutally honest about the culture. And he had young children, so he was really interested in, that flexibility and not too much travel and all of that. And he would have picked the wrong company had he not gone through that process. And I was really proud of him because he's a deep introvert. And he was like, I don't like doing this, but I know I have to because my family comes first. And it was pretty cool. And he's really thriving in his new job. So that's great. So, and then just make sure you ask, like, don't just wing it if you're, kind of interviewing people about something, a company or a culture or an industry. Write down specific questions, prepare what those challenging questions are that you want to ask, and then ask everybody the same questions. I'm too old. Oh my goodness, do I hear this all the time? Is there ageism? Yes. We're one of the only countries that just not only work, but personally, we don't appreciate older people. We throw them away. It's terrible. I mean, it's just very, very difficult sometimes. But, and I'm not saying every one of you does. And of course you're close to your family members and all that, but as a society, as a culture, we veer on the side of, revering youth, that's for sure. So in a survey of older workers by the American Institute for Economic Research, which is a very reliable source, 82% of the respondents reported having successfully switched to a new career after the age of 45. Most older adults who made career changes later in life were successful in their new jobs. And I'm a firm believer in what it says here on the slide. People who have passion and drive and courage can and do make changes at older ages. So while it is true that older workers are dismissed and discriminated against by companies and industries, there are also companies and industries that will hire you regardless of your age. I don't feel passionate about anything. I was sort of like, do I want to include this? Because as remember I said earlier, you don't need to feel passionate about what you're changing careers into. You need to just be pretty interested. So passion isn't, I think that's what people think, that you have to be passionate about baking. So now you're going to go back to school and learn how to be a baker and then open up a bakery. And that's just something that I think media drives that myth a bit, but it's not a requirement for changing careers. At the same time, I do believe that it's a good exercise to explore activities or a hobby that you might have been drawn to but never tried, or things that you stopped doing. And think about what interested you as a child or a young adult. Just because we don't often do that, and it might just bring something out that you forgot about, or that you remembered that you were pretty good at it, or that brought you joy. But again, just be interested, just really interested to reinvigorate yourself if you're going to be thinking about shifting careers. I'm not technologically savvy. You do not need to be a coder. You don't. All you need is a very basic competence with software. And if you're still comfortable with technology, then try learning technology for fun, something fun. And I think about my dad, who died many years ago, but he was in his 80s. And he really never used a computer, and he was playing poker on his computer, and he was sending jokes, and he was doing crossword puzzles. And I was like astounded. My dad was smart, he was a smart guy, but I was really astounded at how facile he was with his computer at his age, having no experience. And then just digital communications really, really helpful. It really helps you be efficient. It helps you reach out to people. It's a great thing. You don't have to go overboard with social media. In fact, you don't need to be involved with social media if you don't want to. That's a choice, but just having the basics, I think, is pretty key. So those are all the roadblocks. Those are the common ones that I tend to hear. And then it's going to look like I don't think there are very many opportunities because I don't have as many slides. But the truth is, I, as a career coach, think there are just a multitude of opportunities. It's limitless. So how do you find out what they are? Well, first of all, you now know who you are. So who you are is what's going to drive those opportunities. You're not going to seek out opportunities that have nothing to do with your personality type or what you're interested in or what your skills are. So that's why that's foundationally important to begin with. Be curious about the world and the things you know little or nothing about. Talk to people who work in jobs or industries that interest you, even if you don't know much about it. Definitely research is great on the internet, on jobs, companies, and industries. Identify trends. I mean, AI, who isn't talking about AI ad nauseum, generative AI right now? If you haven't tried it, try using it. It's kind of fun. I'm using it a little bit for writing. And it's in its infancy, and it'll get better and better and better. Think about problems that need solving and viable solutions. Sometimes I'll give that as an activity to a coaching client who doesn't have a clue what they want to do next, and say, I want you to walk around for a week and identify every problem. And it doesn't have to be like, stopping the wars, which would be nice, but just any problem around you. And then write down what it is and what do you think you would do about it? And it's really interesting how that opens up your mind. So but focus a lot on opportunities, not as much on the roadblocks. And then finally, and we'll be opening up for questions that Scott will facilitate, but create an action plan. I mean, action plans can be a little boring, but I would say a thoughtful, written, brief action plan will bring your dream to life. It's written, it doesn't have to be tedious. Set goals using that old SMART formula that a lot of us learned in school. Keep it flexible because it will change. Revisit it often, run it by people in your life. And I guarantee if you follow these 3 steps and you think about what's motivating you to change careers, I think you will truly be successful. And I just want to sum this up by just giving you quick takeaways, because I know I loaded you down with so much information. So 4 takeaways. 1, changing careers is absolutely possible with the right preparation. Understanding your work situation and why this is motivating you to change careers is key, or your life situation, to identifying what your wants and needs may be. Taking diverse types of self-assessments may be needed to create an effective action plan. And don't let perceived roadblocks and obstacles deter you from pursuing a career change if or until you know that they're realistic. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Scott.
Thank you so much, Julie. That was wonderful as always. I think there's about to be a fire truck driving by me, so if you hear anything, I'm very sorry, but welcome to New York. Before we get into Q&A, and again, if you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A box in your features panel. But I wanted to give you a little heads up about what we have coming up here. Julie is actually joining us for our next 2 webinars as well. They are, next month, we're going to be doing first impressions, resumes, and LinkedIn. And then in May, on May 1st, we're going to be doing networking, both of which are going to be great, and hope you can join us for those. And then in June, we're doing a brand new session on balancing work and nutrition. We're going to be joined by a nutritionist who will walk you through a bunch of great stuff. And then we also have our Midwest conference coming up in just a few weeks on March 22nd. That's a day-long conference held virtually, again, for free. We're going to have one session that might appeal to people on this call today, which is going to be using AI in the job search. So like like Julie was just mentioning, AI is becoming a huge thing, and we're going to have somebody talking through that. We also have our national conference coming up on June 21st. And then our West Coast conference, we don't have a date yet, but it'll be later on this year in October, and we'll keep you updated on that. Feel free to follow us on social media. My email's here too. If you have questions after the fact, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer what I can. You can also send an email to cancerandcareers@cew.org. That might be the fastest way to get an answer to your questions as well. And then I'll leave up the CE requirements again while we go into Q&A. Again, evaluation will open up as you close out of the Zoom window, and you'll get an email tomorrow as well with that link if you miss it today. So Julie, we have a few questions here. The first is, can you speak to changing careers and being, quote, of a certain age? Relevant skills from the past 10 to 15 years. I know you touched a little bit about it, but anything further to say on there?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, don't think about your age and just go through the process and talk to people and get excited and make it happen, and you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's an age-old question. How do you speak to gaps on a resume due to cancer? Has anything changed?
Oh,
Yes.
that used to be our #1 question. I'm happy to report that doesn't matter very much anymore at all. You do not, you can use the career break, like language that LinkedIn introduced during the pandemic. So you can put career break on your resume, and you can put the dates, and you can put a little 1 sentence or a little phrase if you want. Or you can just put career break and not put anything and just move on, because frankly, companies really don't care. I mean, you make sure you're prepared to answer questions about why'd you leave here and why'd you leave here? But, again, you do not need to share your cancer diagnosis or anything that you don't want to. So, I mean, it's just the pandemic was a nightmare, but it also did some great things.
I was just going to say, especially after the pandemic, when so many people were out of work for
Yeah,
months, if not years, if not
right.
currently still, it really changed the landscape a lot, I think. And again, can't be remiss without saying another question we commonly get is, do I need to disclose my diagnosis in a cover letter or in an interview? And the answer is always just do what makes you feel comfortable. Probably the cover letter might not be the best way to do it because it's not going to be like a conversational exchange where they get to know you. It might immediately get put in a no pile. So we tend to say to wait a little longer into the hiring process before bringing it up if you want to. But again, it really depends on you and your circumstances and all of that.
Yeah.
Um, here's one for you. I'm feeling ready to get back to work, but I've been hesitant because I still have a lot of appointments that I need to attend. Do you have any advice on how to weave this into an interview conversation without seeming like I'd be a burden or not reliable at work?
So I think that that's something that you wait till you receive an offer, and then you can negotiate accommodations, time, flexibility, all of the above. And Scott, know a lot about this too, so kick in
Yeah,
if you want.
we'll get people who think that they're withholding or they're lying or something, insert adjective here, and it really isn't that at all. You want to present your best self. You want to focus on your qualifications, what makes you good for the job. Some people feel like they need to discuss being out once a week for a treatment or, like the logistics of that can come after a job offer is made or even when you start working. You don't want to, even though it's illegal to discriminate against somebody with cancer, we unfortunately have heard stories. So I think it's probably best to wait a little later on in the
I
process.
just saw a question, Scott, in the chat box. It was chronological resume versus accomplishment resume, and you want both. Whoever asked that question. So you're doing chronological, most recent, and accomplishments at the same time. I think maybe the person meant, what was that old format of resumes that people they just put like functional areas or something. Nobody writes those anymore. So yeah.
Yeah. How do you have thoughts on like one page versus two or anything like that?
Yeah, what I always say is 1 for entry level, 2 for most people, 3 for people who are in academia, medical science, or very, very senior.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 is the average.
Um, here's one, it might be more for me. How can you leverage skills gained in managing your cancer experience or in caretaking? I think that's something, again, it depends on who you are, but if you can always add to special skills of things you've learned or things like if you took up a hobby while you took some time off for treatment or, organizational skills is something that like I think any person with a diagnosis going through treatment can proudly say having to manage schedules and appointments and
Yeah.
medication and everything you have to go through and how you keep yourself on track. I don't think you necessarily want to put that on a resume in like I had cancer and then I made
Right.
skills, but I think it's something you can definitely put on there.
I mean, I think your skills, whatever skills you're talking about, whether they're on your resume being scanned by ATS or, you're in an interview or whatever, obviously they have to relate to the job that you're applying for. Otherwise it won't matter. You won't be scanned into the yes pile and you won't get an interview. So that's why we harp about keywords and having the right keywords, and skills would fall into that bucket.
Yeah, and just for those who might not know, ATS is
Oh,
application
sorry.
tracking software. We'll get into that next month when we get into resumes and LinkedIn more. But it's
It's
basically a computer system that will scan your resume and
Yeah.
help sort large piles of resumes before they
This
get.
applicant tracking system, and and the issue is that everybody has a different one too, so it's challenging to navigate. So we'll definitely talk about it, yeah, and on April 3rd, I think it is.
And then this is gonna be our final question. If we haven't been able to get to your question today, shoot me an email, cancerandcareers@cew.org, and we'll get an answer for you. But here, it's a basic one, but Julie, where would be the best place to start your job search?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question. I would say even this was about career change and career shifting tonight or today, but I think you still want to kind of know who you are and what you need and what your skills are before you start like throwing yourself out there to the world. Because you want to be able to package yourself, articulate who you are, what you need, what you want, what you have to offer, what your achievements are. That's first, always, before you kind of explore outside the external world.
Yeah, like the more you know about yourself and the more that you know about what you want and you think about
Yeah.
the
And
better
you can make a match and align with, what they're looking for, and how I did it here and I can do it for you. That's what they're interested in.
Exactly. And job postings and all that kind of stuff will come later, but the better you are at articulating yourself will be better successful down the line, I think.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Julie, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to have you for 2 more months here. And I don't want to say goodbye for right now, but
Okay.
we'll see you in a few weeks. And I
All
hope
right. Sounds
everybody
great.
will join us for the next 2 sessions as well.
Okay. Thanks. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Have a great night.